Assalamu alaikum, I'm Dr. Tahira and you're watching yet another episode of Health is Wealth. Your mental health is very important for us. It is Suicide Prevention Month and we care about you. That is why today we are going to talk all about peer pressure, interrelationship stress, anger management, stress management and a lot of educational disability, dyslexia, learning disorders, autism and everything that you need to know about mental health. So let's go ahead and watch the program with psychologist Dr. Ayza Yazdani. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to yet another very exciting episode of Health is Wealth. Today is a very important topic that we are discussing. Why? Because it is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month as well, and we have a lot of students out there who are facing so many difficulties in their everyday life. Life is getting difficult for each one of us, especially for students with the growing pressure. That's why we thought, why not get on board with us? And thank you so much for her time today is Dr. Ayza Yazdani. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayza Yazdani. You're a psychotherapist as well as a psychologist. Yes. Would you please tell us that what are the different problems that students these days are facing, because a lot of students out there are facing with a lot of anxiety, fear, pressure, peer pressure, and how do you deal with them?
Well, you're exactly right about the things they're facing, and the world is so fast paced, and with the socio-economic pressures that the families are having, children are under a great deal of pressure to excel. They must excel, they must always excel. Now, you know, children, human beings are not all the same. They're
exactly, they're designed differently.
They're designed differently, and they have different capabilities, they have different strengths, they are beautiful amalgam of qualities. Right? Now, society wants them to be in a particular way, or maybe in a particular field, you know, doctor, engineer, flana.
In our country, it's very, very,
predefined.
very, very predefined. We have very little options. We don't allow them to soar anyways.
Exactly, and because it's a matter of not only a degree, then it's a matter of lifetime earning and a social whatever acceptance and lifestyle. Now, children as young as 3-4 years old, they are just being told the most killing phrase of, I think, this century is you can do it, or you can be anything you want. Now, a child who is having difficulties and he's being told you can do it, the child is unable to say no, I can't do it, is unable to ask for help. Now the pressure keeps on adding, and people, parents and the school, and it's a combined system. And nobody can understand that the child is struggling with some things. So we fail to pick up the initial signs.
Right.
So it's the when the child begins to talk or not talk, and then it's the preschool, then the primary, and then they really hit it at the metric or the O levels.
Right.
And then the next band, they really struggle, and that is the deciding factor whether they go on in their life or not. So it filters down to that early time, and then accumulates all over the years. And if a child is not dealt with at that time, then the anxiety, the shame and the guilt, they just combine.
So when we talk about developmental delay, at what age should a child start talking, understanding, responding, so that people know that if they see any sort of delay at this age, they should be going to a psychologist and getting a psychiatric assessment?
Well, it's very simple. First of all, you can Google your answer. Right?
Okay.
I always tell parents, look, you have to look up, right? Now, the first thing is the baby is responding in the womb.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So the baby, the newborn, is responding to the environment, right? Then the two interactions between the mother and the child. And as soon as the child begins to develop some sort of vision and eye contact, which is around 4 to 5 months, and it becomes stable, right? Okay. So the child is looking at people, and then the initiating cry for hunger or for any need.
Responding.
Right? Responding to cold or warmth or so those are the very initial communication, right? Thing. And then the child starts to make a few sounds like 8, 9, 10 months old. So what we call babbling, and then sounds baba, mama, and the baby says baba first. So let the fathers know that.
So, okay.
And then, so you see, it is that first year which is very crucial. We are looking for some words, some sounds, typical patterns of initial speech. And then it just goes on. So when the child says apple, like 2 years old, it means it's a one-word sentence.
Okay.
So by the age of 3, he will or she will say, I want apple.
Okay.
So we are not looking at grammar, but he's saying, I want apple. So it's a sentence.
Okay.
So by the age of 4, there should be no speech problem as such in lisping. Or it has to be clear. All sounds must be clear.
Okay.
Like if the child is saying aru, as we say in peach, so the re, the dal, the hard consonants, they must be there.
Okay. And once we know that a child is okay with the speech, but the child is not learning very easily. For example, if the mother or the father is talking to them, they're not following instructions. They're not able to learn or grasp things like, okay, this is your brush or this is how you do. Then how do we deal with such learning disability?
Well, you have to go to the either if the child has been put in a school by then or a pre-nursery or a playgroup, they will make some attempt to work on the child, right?
Okay.
And about a year or so down the year, the teacher will point out to you, look, your child is having difficulties. Now, if a parent is oversensitive and defensive, like, how can my child do something wrong? It's an injustice to the child.
Exactly.
Right? Because we live in a community, we are supposed to be with people, and people will help you in that. So the teacher is your first helper, your first most important person who is now viewing the child out of that family environment in a group setting.
Right.
So the parent will say, oh no, look, he or she does such good work at home. He listens to me, he does this. So I have to educate each and every parent. One-on-one is always different to 1 in 5.
Exactly.
So the teacher will, so if the child is not responding to basic commands, now that's a very serious thing.
Okay.
Because children begin to respond. So now I will link your question to another very important thing.
Okay.
By the age of 2 years, like 22 months, 22 to 24 months, now that's a very crucial window.
Right.
Children, they have developed a bit of speech and what we say reciprocal interaction and responding to behaviors. What is happening at this time now? If you see your child at this time reversing or not doing anything, it's a very serious sign. It's an indication for referral.
Okay.
Right? Because parents are giving the screen.
Yeah.
And I have had parents who have literally propped up a baby and put the screen, you can't put a 1-month-old baby in front because even the eyesight, the baby can't even see the mother.
Can't even focus.
So if you give the screen so early, brain development
will be regressed.
It won't take place. The communication skills will not develop. Speech will not develop. So I am seeing a lot of children who are talking in perfect English, cartoon-like language, and they're not really listening to anybody around them. They just want what they desire, and they will demand it, irrespective of whether they should have.
So they live in this false world out there, right?
They live in their own world, and they don't have the ability. So we are conversing.
Yeah.
We are following a topic.
Right.
And we can narrate something and
interact, and they can't do that.
They can't do that. So that child will only be focused on himself or herself. And why I say himself, because we see a lot of cases in boys. There are more. But that doesn't mean that girls are not there. So the girls are the hidden or the silent population.
In a way, you're saying that it's not just a mental disorder, it's something that we have imposed over them by giving them the screen and by not interacting, because everybody is busy nowadays, the working women, the men, there's nobody at home, so the screen is their only friend. So that is why they're developing more and more of these learning disabilities. How do you group learning disabilities that are not by the screen? For example, children who can't read, children who can't write, what they call dyslexia, I don't know, dysgraphia or whatever, and there are a few who have a problem with like maths, few who are better at arts. How do you differentiate between them, and are these real concerns, and how do you address them?
You just asked the question right, I'm after from my heart. Because you see, being an educational psychologist, I have been creating awareness, and so who can identify, like the question is, who can identify? Now everybody cannot.
Exactly. It's not
Teachers
our field.
cannot. They just know the signs and symptoms. So we have people who might, we even have a bill, but that doesn't put the name of psychologist there, unfortunately.
Really?
Yes.
So what do they put there?
Special education teachers.
Oh, okay.
Or remedial teachers.
But they wouldn't be able to do that. No. They can, that's impossible.
Because we have to do an IQ test.
Right.
Okay, so there's an intellectual assessment. Then there's followed by a specialized assessment.
Okay.
Right? And so the psychologist is qualified to do that. As we are not developing any tests in Pakistan, we have to get them at a very high cost from abroad.
Right.
So understanding them, using them, and that basically means a very restricted segment of the population can avail them.
Okay.
Yes. But however, coming back to your initial question, how do we differentiate?
Right.
So we get referrals for as early as 4 years, 5 years that this child has this issue, right, and not learning. So we do need to see. We don't do formal IQ assessment, or any other formal assessment before the age of 6.
Okay.
So any assessment before 6, so we are doing an informal, we are using some non-verbal tests or basic assessments, standardized, giving us an international level of score, right? Then we observe, then we take questions, and then we see the child. So we differentiate between cognitive ability and lack of ability, let's say that way. So, for example, if a child is developing concepts, and it's like, my favorite question is like, not for a younger child, but for a little older child, I will say, why do you offer namaz?
Okay. Okay.
So you know why we offer namaz, alhamdulillah, right?
Yeah.
But that one child who says, will not give you answer, will not be able to answer, because the concept of Allah varies with ages, but the child being Muslims, we all know that why we have to,
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. So for instance, if any other concept is not there, for instance, safety concept, for instance, how you sit in a social situation, like, sometimes children have no idea, and they will behave very inappropriately, or they will not know how to regulate themselves, like in terms of mood and anger and all that. So those are those issues which differentiate a child from learning disability and intellectual disability.
Okay, so they're two different things. Yes. So what about children like who have problems? For example, somebody who has cerebral palsy or something like that. How do you take somebody with cerebral palsy, and do they improve with these continuous sessions? Are they able to then actually use the washroom on their own, dress themselves? Because I know that people with cerebral palsy cannot be cured, but can they be made more and more able to not be classified as completely disabled?
Well, it's a neurological disorder.
Yes,
CP,
that's
right?
for sure. Yeah.
So it has 4 levels, and it depends on what level the child is born with.
Okay.
But the concept that Dr. Tahira, we must develop in Pakistan is that no matter what the level, intervention and early identification and intervention in terms of remedial, in terms of providing supports at every level, they are extremely important. Okay. Assuming that a child can't learn is the worst thing. It's a death sentence.
Right.
I have mothers who have literally worked so hard, and they've turned the diagnosis around.
Yeah.
Right.
That is amazing, actually. Yes.
And it's a struggle in a country where, and some of these mothers are barely literate.
Yeah.
I had a mother yesterday, and she said, I have searched on YouTube and the videos I've taken out, and this is what I'm doing, and said, this is amazing, because the child was referred to me for dyslexia,
right,
whereas he had some other issue.
Okay.
So that's why I always stress why we need to have a detailed session with the parents first. So I get referrals from all over.
So if somebody is dyslexic, for example, they have a problem with reading. So are you able to overcome that problem by gradual exposure to reading? Or
okay, so the difference is because it's a conceptual thing, and so dyslexia is a common term, right?
Okay.
It comes under the technical description of a specific learning disorder. Okay. So specific learning disorder, you have reading, you have writing, and then you have math, or what we say.
I think I have that.
I think we should have that, because we always have to give less and receive more.
Right.
So it's very hard to differentiate all of these. So how do you do that? You need to assess the child using certain tools, right?
Yeah.
Now what happens is that with the specific learning disorder, the mechanical, like you said, writing. So I will assess for writing issues, but I can't assess for a physical thing, because that's the field of a
neurologist,
occupational therapist.
Okay, occupational therapist.
So we have a body discord,
and then a mind one,
dyspraxia, in which the body movements are jerky. Then again we have to refer to the medical or the special occupational therapist. So we have a whole team. I can't work alone.
Yeah, you can't work in isolation. You need a
I have a remedial therapist, then I have a speech therapist, then I have to have
But the point is, if anybody is suffering from any of these, they can be identified and worked upon.
They can be worked upon, and then the remedial therapist, we will assess what level the child is at, or the adult even. Then we will design the teaching methodology accordingly.
But don't you think it's very unfair that every child has to take the same examination system? It's designed for just everybody. There's no inclusiveness in this entire thing, and it's very, very unfair on children who cannot do all of this. Not everybody can perform in the same way. So what do we do about this education system of ours that is putting a lot of pressure on kids lately?
Change the system.
And how do we change that?
Okay, so all the international systems, I'm not going to name them, but they are here. And why they are so popular is because psychologists, we assess the child, we give a report. And so they ask, what do you need? So whether the child needs extra time, whether the child needs a reader, whether or needs a scribe, or a laptop assistance, separate room, because with attention and focus, we advise sitting alone and then having no disturbance.
One-on-one sessions?
During the examination.
Okay, during the
examination. So it's maybe the child is made to sit in a room in front of a wall. So rather than a window like I have, and I'm maybe getting distracted. But so what happens is that in that, and then they're given extra time. So the assessment basically gives them extra time. On the other hand, I did hear of somebody getting some extra time for this son on the spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder. Is it part of the metric and the FA intermediate, and is it being streamlined? Is it being incorporated? That I really don't know, because it requires a great planning. Because you see, we have arrangements for people who are visually impaired or hearing impaired.
But we don't have anybody for the spectrum. I don't think we are very inclusive with that.
No. There's no acceptance, or
there's no acceptance at all. So how would you describe children on the spectrum? Because we're finding a lot of children nowadays who are on the spectrum. So what exactly is autism? How does it develop in children? And how do parents deal with this autism? And not just learning disability, but emotional problems that these children have. They're very, very aggressive at times. They're repeatedly doing things, and which could be very annoying or unacceptable to others. So how do parents, and how does everybody else need to be educated as well to be a little inclusive about children? If you're on a flight, for instance, and there's a child who's constantly banging his foot against your seat, and he's autistic, and you're not accepting it.
You know what? It happened to me once. I was on a flight in Europe. It was about 2 hours, 3 hours flight, and this I don't know which, he was maybe Norwegian, this child, and he was constantly kicking. And I just looked once. I said, "What's happening?" And do you know, for the rest of the 3 hours, the parents changed seats. They sat next to him, and they were literally, they had a light hand on his leg, and they kept him busy. So it's about parental responsibility. It's about being aware of the needs of the people. Now, autism is a spectrum disorder, right? It doesn't mean it's like it's going to be in a straight line.
It's not going to be the same for everyone.
Yes, that you will have, the child will have these symptoms. So it's very hard to diagnose, because sometimes the child will have this problem or this thing. So that's why we call it a spectrum, right?
Right.
Now it starts out, like I said, with this. Not only with the screen time, so that's sort of a virtual thing, but at the age of almost 2, the child regresses. And that's when he was looking so well at the parents, and then he was seeing the words, and then he was doing a lot of other things. He just stops doing that. Then the child may do some hand flapping like this. Right. These are the sensory issues. Sometimes they go on tiptoes.
And then they don't have eye contact either,
right? They lose eye contact. And they will look only briefly and look away.
And they keep fidgeting with stuff as well.
And they have. There will also be incidents of lining up.
They line things, line the toys, and
However, as they get enrolled in school, as they get a lot of scolding.
Yeah.
So what happens is they start to hide these features, and some other behavior comes in. Basically, a child on spectrum has sensory issues, right? So what we call flapping, and if there's loud noise, they will cover their ears, right? So they will change you, and it's very hard to diagnose a child on the mild spectrum level around the age of 10, 8, 9, 10, because the picture starts to change. But we look for the signs and we know what they are, and generally people don't know.
Yeah.
So they are just struggling with those same issues, doesn't listen, doesn't like these things, is ziddi, stubborn.
Right.
So the difficulty with change in transition, okay, it's time to go home. I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
And there you go, there's a meltdown.
Yeah,
so
they don't want to change or switch.
Yes. So parents will say there's ziddi, and then the kids will not go to places like weddings or malls.
Crowded places.
Places.
But if you keep having regular sessions with them, with a proper trained psychologist like yourself, then their social behavior, does it improve?
Yes. The earlier you identify, the earlier you work. So we have to give a speech therapy. We have to give, and you will find generally a child who's on the spectrum has not spoken before 3 years old, and maybe 4. So we say he is non-verbal, and he will be always taking his mama's or father's hand and taking it like taking the hand, and if he wants this or there, and then pointing and making odd sounds. So we have to start speech therapy.
Okay.
And then we put in ABA or behavior therapy. Occupational therapy is very important. Unfortunately, we don't have enough occupational therapists in Pakistan, or especially Islamabad.
We don't accept it even as a specialty.
We don't accept it. We have, I'll come on to my favorite topic if you have time.
Yes.
So, which is the legislation and the certification.
Oh, yes, of course. That is a huge issue.
So you have to have trained and registered therapists so they can grow in their own field independently.
That's true. What about ADHD, the focus problem? Like a lot of students and a lot of children, even adults nowadays, because of the use of social media, or I don't know why, but they're always in a hurry. There's always in a rush, and they can't seem to focus on anything. That is why they have issues with their not just their studies or their work, but also issues in daily life and relationships and commitments and in completing any goal for that matter.
It's like, so when I deal with an older age group, I always prefer going for an assessment, right?
Okay.
And when we do the intellectual assessment, we find what we call the processing speed. So the processing speed is basically how long does it take you to get ready to do a task.
Right.
So if I need a couple of hours, I have to make a call and I get in the mood. So it's because I don't want to deal with this task, right? So a lot of children are having issues in processing speed, right? It's a visuospatial issue, like looking at tasks and doing it. At the same time, there's something called working memory.
Okay.
Able to remember simple maths and stuff. If these two things are in a range that we're looking at, then we say ADHD, attention deficit. And then again we see whether it is attention deficit
or hyperactivity.
Or hyperactivity. It can be either one or. Usually I'll tell you, people, because such a overused term.
Yeah, very extremely.
Extremely. Like a panic attack and depression. There's such phrases. So ADHD is not always or very commonly on its own.
Okay.
It's usually coming under another diagnosis.
Okay.
And again, I'll tell you, when there's too much screen time, so the children are controlling the speed.
Yeah. So they have a amphetamine boost as well all the time, right?
So if I'm talking to them, if a mother or a teacher is talking to them, normal speed, it's like, why are you taking so long?
Right.
So young people you will see talking very fast.
Yeah.
And just phrases or maybe. So the speech patterns have enormously changed.
Yeah.
And as they grow up and as they grow older with the pressures and let me remind you, this is Suicide Awareness Month.
We'll be coming to that. So let's actually come to that as well. I was talking about this constant serotonin boost that people are getting via social media. They keep switching reels, and everything excites them as much. So when when they stop that, there's nothing in real life to excite you on a daily basis on such a on such a rate or pace, and it's very unrealistic out there on social media. You have these unrealistic expectations, and then there's a lot of peer pressure in terms of money, in terms of lifestyle, brands, as well as achievements. Like every other person is talking about great big achievements in their life, and this is putting a lot of people at the risk of suicide. So could you please tell our audience especially how they need to keep their children away from such thoughts, how they need to keep themselves away from such thoughts, and if they have these thoughts, they're not mad or crazy and they need to go to a psychologist.
Well, let me tell you that before COVID, we were looking at anxiety, depression for youth above 18 to 27 age group. Post-COVID, the age band has gone down. So now we are looking at suicidal ideation at the age from 10, 11 years onwards.
Okay.
Now, suicidal ideation is basically thoughts of killing oneself.
Okay.
If I die, nobody will miss me.
Yeah.
So that's
my life is purposeless.
My life is when I die, they will find out.
Yeah.
How important and things like that. So the unrealistic requirements of the social media, the boost that it gives, and then the lives in cities, there's nothing, they're not doing, there are no hobbies. So I think hobbies,
there's no sports, no exercise.
So when children come to me and say, what sports do you do? They tell me 10, we do football, we do this. I said, wow, where do you do that? Oh, laptop.
Online.
And I'm like, okay, sorry, my bad. So the thing is, the lives have changed, and in that, we are not having children do their, like clean up their room, take care of the household chores. There's absolutely nothing for a child of any social status to do.
But you know what, there's something very strange that I noticed in the US and Canada as well when I went there. The problem is over here we are putting the children on the screens, that's our fault. But over there what they're doing is they're putting the children in so many sports at a time.
Exactly.
And that the child has no time to love, bond or be free. The child doesn't know that there could be a time of leisure either.
Very structured activities.
Yeah. So that's making them a robot. And that's why they go on shooting sprees every now and then.
That's America for you. But you're right, their life is very busy in these terms. But the thing is, they are interacting, they are doing things, and then they have an aim. They have when they're teenagers, they're working in stores. Just compare the average life of the children here. So no matter what happens, either the mother is doing the work, or the maid is doing the work.
Right.
So I always say that when you give a child so much free time, what will the child do? So you can't be interacting with the child all the time. You are not like playing sports. You can't take out.
Right.
What is the child doing rest of the time? So we need to create routines, self-care, home care, and then we need to expose them to being able to do different things, right? For instance, different chores. Being independent is good, and then not in the sense of like being cooking and stuff. That comes with
just
age.
doing their own, making their own bed, doing their own
and doing their own things. But as soon as it's possible, they need to be independent and going, like internships or stuff like that.
Right.
Now that is still considered a very bad word here, internships.
Yeah.
So the independence, this kind of skill learning.
Actually, it's the respect for the kind of job as well. There should be more acceptance to all sorts of jobs, because we start thinking that few jobs are menial for us. We're okay doing them abroad, but we don't do it over here.
Exactly.
So we need to create more opportunities for teenagers to get on their foot and start working as well.
I'm an EMDR therapist. So basically it's a latest therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And we are very few therapists here, but it's a very structured technique. It's for trauma and abuse and all of that. And it has marvelous outcomes.
Okay.
The first thing we do in that is we give the client a set of skills, a set of resources. Here right now, people, if they're anxious, upset, how do you cope? For example, if I were to ask you, what do you do when you're upset or angry or irritated?
Right.
We go to bed, or we just cry, or these are the answers you get. But if I were to teach you that if you're angry, okay, so we have the typical, drink water, change position, that's okay. But then I would also
find a purpose, I guess.
Then I would also tell you to, okay, maybe you can do a few stretches, maybe you can just call a friend and talk about something else, maybe you can just take a walk or something and distract yourself. And in doing that, your stress level comes down. So whether a child is angry, sad, whatever, what skill have you given a child to cope with that? Now you will find we are not giving our children any skills.
No, not at all. Right.
That's the gap.
Yeah.
Keep quiet. No, it's, so children come to me and who have been bullied. They said, I said, what did your parents say? Ignore it. Now tell me, how is it possible to ignore? You have to learn to deal with the bully.
Yeah.
Right? So this end of the relationship, which has to teach skills to the young children. So if you are not giving these skills, the anxiety, the stress and apathy, there's nothing to do.
So why is it not included in schools? Why don't we have a subject in school by proper psychologists who teach children all of this, dealing with each other, dealing with peer pressure, dealing with the the life outside, because once they go out, once they're about to take their exams, they can't deal with the stress, they can't deal with the panic, they get into panic attacks, and then once they're out in the the practical life, they are complete failures, no matter if they're getting grades or whatsoever.
Exactly.
So don't you think it's a very important thing that we should be doing at some government level and including this as a subject? We have a lot of stupid subjects out there that are nonsensical completely.
Exactly. So I've been doing psychology all my life, and when I was going to do my PhD, I didn't want to do clinical because my thought was, how do I maximize my impact, right?
So it's educational.
So educational, and the best place for an educational psychologist is in the school, where then when you're working with 10 teachers, you're actually dealing with maybe 1,000 kids. Right? So that increases your this thing. I agree with you. Regular sessions, group sessions, group techniques. We don't believe in emotional regulation, do you know, in Pakistan?
But we were just discussing something with a dentist a while ago, and he said, every 8 months you should visit a dentist. Why is it not mandatory to visit a psychologist as well? I think it is extremely important for me and for everyone else around me, everyone, to visit and regulate our emotional and mental health.
It is such a stigma. The times I have gone to a school and the child has come to me, the entire class and the entire school knows, the psychologist was coming today and this child is going. And that's very stigmatizing. So we have to remove the stigmas, and the only way to do it is just have the psychologist. Believe me, it just takes 5 to 8 years to change the thinking. Because when they are given those appropriate skills in sports,
right,
in group settings, in classrooms, rather than being pulled out and going to the counselor or things like that, it's normalizing a behavior. We talk very fast in Pakistan. We talk very loud. We take pride in getting angry and being emotional.
Yeah, we think it's a matter of valor.
And on your trips abroad, have you noticed how the decibels are very low?
It's they're very calm. They don't even honk. There's no road rage.
So why is this difference, right? So the social manners and the social expectations can only be changed in the, in one school I went and they said, the kids, they don't say salam. So I was like, why don't the teachers start saying salam to the children? And they will learn that it's a thing to do rather than complain.
So what is the best way to cope with anger? Repressed anger, bursting out anger and all of this, because it's a very difficult world out there and anger is inevitable. So how do you control it?
So your anger will rise over the years,
right,
as you tend to go into professional life, because as a student you are generally bottle it up.
Right.
So when you get in professional life, you can safely take it out. You can vent it out at your junior or the staff or whatever, right? And the mother can take it out on the kids. So I would always recommend a medical evaluation first, for instance, like blood pressure or something. And then I would recommend just trying out certain strategies which you may get on internet or anything, for
so like deep breathing, yoga and Reiki.
But deep breathing will not
meditation.
Work with everyone. Yes, meditation. And I said all of those skills, increasing your repertoire of skills which help you deal with different situations. And then those people who still find that these things are not working basically means that there is something behind it.
Yeah, and they need to come out with it.
And they need to get professional help. So we always filter out people with a little bit of things, and they can deal with it, but then there will always be a certain section, 3-4 people, maybe in 10 people, who will need a special set of counseling.
What about low self-esteem, worthlessness? Because a lot of girls out there have very, very unrealistic, filtered images in front of them right now, and the entire aesthetics industry is actually thriving on ruining people with, because not everybody has to look the same. Just not everybody can learn the same, not everybody has to look the same. But they have set up very unrealistic standards of beauty. How do you manage girls, especially, dealing with this very, very, very difficult?
You'll be horrified. Almost every other girl, we don't have figures, but I have heard every other girl. So we have anorexia issues where they don't eat.
They don't eat.
And you can't find out. And then, the first part of it has been the body shaming by the parents.
Yeah, constant.
From age of 8 onwards. Yeah, don't eat so much, you will become so fat. I have literally, parents literally will make the girl stand on a weighing scale every day. Yeah. So these kind of practices are very bad. They will put pressure on the girls, and then in the schools where there's a lot of, so we call this sexualization of the gender. So the girls, if they become conscious of being a female and of using makeup as early as possible.
No, now they're going for cosmetic procedures which are criminal, actually, especially I would call the doctors criminal as well, the ones doing it. They're altering their shape of their and color of their complexion, their shape of their bodies and everything.
So it's starting at that age where you are not fair, or you eat too much and you're fat. Actually, the age of 11 to 18 for boys and girls, it is like changing from an ugly duckling to a swan.
So you have to be accepting.
So you have to be accepting. But in schools, generally, if the children are bullying each other, you know how it is, the good-looking girls get together, or they lead a group. So I'm getting a lot of information about schools, bullying from class 5 or below class 5 and that level.
That has a lot to do with our society as well, our advertising, our opportunities in school, our treatment. We always favor the ones who are, who look a certain way.
Yes.
That is, we are wrong at that part, but we do that, and that is why the parents also get very, very touchy, and they're forcing the children because they want their children to be accepted more into all these positions, and
then make good matches, like we said in the beginning, have a very good job and have a very good match and have the perfect family, as if it will just come by, So those are the unrealistic expectations. And I think that is the biggest injustice which has been done to this generation.
So how do we deal with grief? Because grief for a little period of time is fine, but if it gets like chronic and we start being like depression, we go into depression, and then we are crying, and we are unable to do any of our day-to-day activities, and it starts affecting our sleep, our diet, our behavior. How do we deal with that?
Okay, so the international classification for bereavement is now 2 years.
Okay.
Previously it was 1 year, that one anniversary of each occasion will go past, and then the person should be able to come out.
So time should heal.
So time to heal, right?
Right.
So now it's 2 years, but the point is exactly where you said, where a person gives up his routine. Eating, sleeping, working, interacting with people. When that starts happening, that's the point for referral. In EMDR, we don't believe in any specific time for grief or therapy.
Okay.
We say you can take therapy the moment you want to take it.
Okay.
It can be immediately the next day after bereavement, or it can be later.
Okay.
But you are right, it can be disrupting.
Okay.
And it can be then, one thing again I will say, when women become widowed, sometimes they are not able to come out of it.
Yeah.
Again, why?
Because there's no acceptance of them in the society anyways.
And they have been so secluded that they don't know what to do now. Like, I know someone, she saw, oh, this is 1,000 rupee, this is what 1,000 rupee notes look like. So if a woman has never handled money, who has never had to, and she may have had a good life, but she doesn't know how to take care of herself. Now she's dependent on so
So many.
I had this interesting case. Somebody came and they said, our mother, we are taking such good care of her. She has 2 maids, and they dress her, they clothe her, and she's fed in her room and everything, and she's getting depressed.
She has nothing to do
because the father had passed away. I said, well, of course she'll get depressed.
She's lonely, and that's a normal need. Yes. Why don't we realize that loneliness can be a very, very big problem? We are okay with isolating women, whether they're divorcees or whether they are widows. We just isolate them, and for us, marriage or remarriage or even befriending someone is a huge taboo and sin, and we get judgmental, and then we accuse them.
We make the decisions for others' life. That's how you should live, and however you don't need that. Whereas the basic needs of a person is to have exposure, to be able to travel, to
talk to someone, someone, companionship. So how would you tell this or create more and more awareness amongst people to understand the problems of their parents, their aging parents, ailing parents, widowed parents, divorced parents, lonely parents, and their children at the same time? For example, if they're busy at work the whole day, that the importance of friends and social circle and socializing.
With regards to parents, we have this concept of khidmat.
Service.
Service. So in doing this kind of service, that my wife will cook for you and you don't need to do anything, and so this is the greatest disservice you can do.
Exactly, you're making them completely dependent.
And they need to exercise, a daily exercise routine, and they need to cook for themselves. They make their own cup of tea or whatever. In doing that, like I said,
give
for
them
the
a
children,
purpose.
Your 24 hours will be busy.
Right.
When there's nothing to do. So if I always tell parents, if you take away the cell and say no more screen time, but then what are you giving instead? So focus on what you are giving instead of what you are taking away. So that always works. So it has to be a balance. And if you may have seen in Singapore and the Far East, they value grandparents so much. Then on Sundays or other days, they have a special day where grandparents and children, they can go on the buses free. I saw this in Singapore.
So they can go around.
They can go around. Yeah. So if you make it costly,
it's hard for them.
They will not be able to go. So those who are able to go. Yesterday I saw this very interesting post. There's a grandfather. They have a grandkid holiday every year. So only the grandkids come.
That's so cute. What about relationship counseling? A lot of divorces on the rise, and intolerance amongst the youngsters. They don't tolerate, and they have this fairy tale imagination, expectation of each other. So what do you tell them about premarital counseling or marital counseling? How should they go about it?
It's like, because boys and girls, they are much more educated than previously. Like the women usually
they're more independent now.
Yes. So usually women would be just graduate or something, right? Now every girl is mashallah working and has her own thing. So we have to incorporate this in the new thing. So the relationship expectations have changed, and the boys need to know that, and the girls need to know that. The care doesn't mean any one of them is a slave. So when we talk to them, we talk of realistic expectations, what to expect, what to plan. And then we always talk of what is also sunnat for us, right? You have to be together. You have to be in the same page in this relationship. You have to
respect each other,
and do
tolerate each other, sacrifice at times, compromise. Because now compromise has become like a no-no word for some reason.
It's a straight-out fight for independence, which there's no need for really. It's just a matter of bringing your schedules in harmony.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayza, for joining us today. We had Dr. Ayza with us, and she told us in great depth and detail that if you're suffering from any sort of problem, whether it's grief that you can't come out of, any sort of relationship problem, or your child is on the spectrum or has any learning or emotional disability, please do not hesitate in seeking professional help, because professional help from a psychologist is going to help them discover themselves and make it easier for themselves, for you, and for the whole world to be a better place to live in. Thank you so much for watching. Inshallah, we'll meet you next week. Allah Hafiz.